If we can't talk to each other, we're not gonna make it.
Sometimes I feel like I've bitten off more than I can chew.
Most of the time, I work in a glass jar and lead a very uneventful life.
A face full of glass hurts like hell when you're in it.
That's weird. That glass looks half full to me.
Eating glass.
Eating glass and staring into the abyss.
Glass? Who gives a shit about glass? Who the fuck is this?
It's kind of part of our culture to eat glass.
We gotta get some safety goggles next time.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Chewing Glass, the show where we talk to Solana developers building in the ecosystem. Today I have with me Italo Casas. He is the founder and creator of SolDev, which is a great discoverability content aggregator for the Solana ecosystem. How's it going, Italo?
Hey Chase, thank you for having me. Everything good?
Yeah, man, it's great to have you on here. You know, you and I have known of each other at this point for probably 5 or 6 months. I think you reached out to me on Twitter sometime around then with some idea of building a content aggregator for Solana because you did not like the way that you were discovering Solana content at the time. It was a little immature, and you've kind of really helped us get to that place. So really appreciative of that. I guess like I usually get started here before we dive too far into it, is to kind of just get a rundown on where you came from, like what you've been doing, and like how you kind of landed in the Solana ecosystem.
Yeah. Then I came to the US when I was 21 years old. I studied on college on NYU, the computer science there. Before coming to the US, I was studying cybernetics. That is just like a math version of computer science. Then I learned to program there. When I came here, I went to college, and like after my second year, I found out that being on college was not the best path for me. Then I got an opportunity to work at Google in the Google Maps team. I worked there for a short period of time. Then I start working in startups just because I enjoy more thinking on how to solve problems for real users, but not just as a developer, but trying to think on the product side, having like a different hats. Then I changed companies, and then COVID started, and I decided to take a sabbatical from work just to focus on my family at that point. And then when I came back to start coding again, I was looking into blockchains. Then after I did some research, and I decided that Solana was the best place for me to start developing. And then I was trying to learn Solana, and I felt that the experience was not the most productive for the way I learn. Then I think at the point for me was okay. The first step for me maybe is to build, the best experience for myself. That way, all the path for learning is easier for me, and then I think that will be useful for other people. And that is why I decided to build SolDev. I felt like learning Solana or any blockchain in general was too decentralized, and what I wanted was to centralize that learning experience, put all the content inside the same place with the same UI. That way, easier for me to find good content or content of quality, and allow people to essentially being able to submit new content. That way I can be up to date with everything going on Solana, because everything was going so fast that was almost impossible to stay up to date at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time that you had reached out, like I had been thinking for a long time. At that point, we just redone the website. We just collected as much content as we could, but like our website is set up a specific way that's kind of more on the branding side, and like it wasn't the best way to search for information. So when you reached out, and I was already thinking about ways to kind of redo that, it was the perfect timing, because I was like, we have all these things. I need to make sure that the information is discoverable and that people actually find it useful and an easy way to search it. I remember the first version of SolDev that you sent me. It was a little bit questionable at the time, but like I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure we started doing our bi-weekly kind of talks and just kind of going through products and features. And I think it was probably only like 2 or 3 weeks after the initial version, you completely kind of rewrit the UI UX and started improving it from there and adding features, the ability to submit, the ability to search. I think one of the last features that came along was the ability to do the text search, and like all these things just kept adding up.
Yeah.
And then people started submitting. The next thing you know, you have this place, this central repository for content. And honestly, like I've shared it some recently, like some of the feedback that I've seen, and I don't even know if I had shared this with you yet, is that it's super useful, but to new people, and this is not necessarily SolDev's fault, it's just a little all over the place. So there's no clear path to learning. And these are just like next steps that as an ecosystem, we need to get better at. Like I think the content rating system will greatly help that. So it'll show people what's good and what's bad, and just like starting adjusting things as you go.
Yeah, that is actually what I'm working on right now, just to allow people to upvote, downvote content. The problem with that is that let's say that we have this piece of content with 200 upvotes, and the main issue is that maybe that content is now old, like an old version of Solana, 1.8, whatever, and now we are in 1.10, 1.11. They you need to make sure that it's not only rating the content, but making sure that we know when the content is stale, and we need to just don't show any more of that content.
It's a really good point. And like this is something, just because Solana moves so quickly, like we saw this with Candy Machine V1, all of that Candy Machine V1 tutorials were outdated immediately and basically rendered useless. And like who knows what version of Candy Machine will be in 2 weeks. Like when you work on an open source project like Solana and things are moving so rapidly, you either have to be able to rely on people who plan to update their tutorials as time goes on, or just be willing to just throw them away at some point, and making sure to keep track of that. Like having a vote feature is great, but like a thumbs up or a thumbs down to say like thumbs down and like it's why, and somebody's like, I did this and it doesn't work anymore because XYZ has been updated. Like it's a really, with so much going on and so much content and so many tools out there, it's a really hard problem to solve like in a scalable way. But that's eventually things slow down. Updates happen a little less frequently once things are stable. Like for instance, on Ethereum, things don't change very often. So that content can like last over a long period of time. We're in a little bit different a situation. But a lot of it still like, it still stands the test of time, but some of that's kind of starting to get outdated a bit. And we just need to make sure that we can keep up to date with all those things.
Yeah. I think that is my philosophy with creating as a developer, right? It's just giving consistent progress all the time and listening to feedback. And I think that is what makes pros better at the end.
Yeah, the interesting thing working with you was I basically had to fight tooth and nail to get dark mode because you hate CSS, but we finally got it. But like, so for context, you're a back-end engineer by trade. Like that's pretty much what you enjoy.
I started my career as a front-end developer doing just JavaScript. Not too much CSS, but mostly JavaScript. Then I transitioned after moving to startups just to be more like your friendly backend DevOps guy. Then that is what I have been doing for the last 6, 7 years. It's essentially Node.js, Golang, and lots of AWS and Google Cloud and Azure.
Yeah, it seems like you actually somehow like picked up some product skills along the way, because I've seen your project boards and your wireframes and all these things that you don't see very developers, you don't typically see building out wireframes like that. So it was pretty cool experience to just kind of watch that process grow.
Yeah, I definitely like to. I work with a couple of good designers on my career. I try to consume as much as possible knowledge from them. When I'm trying to think about what I want to build, I always try to put it first in some like really ugly wireframes, but that allow me to think more clear about what I want to build, if what I am assuming makes sense or not. At least for me at that point, yeah.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit, I guess some things that you and I never really talked about a whole lot because we were working together on SolDev so much was that you were building all this content for yourself. You were building a place so you could always have an easy way to find what you needed. Like when we were originally talking, were you actually learning Solana at the time, or did you just pause that to build out SolDev?
I started learning before talking to you, but I think only when I mean I started learning, it means that I read Paul X article. That's it. Then I got the basics. Then I started building SolDev, and at that point I was not working full time on anything. Then I was just trying to code 2-3 hours a day, and that's it. And I use all that for SolDev. And then in the last month is when I started to get serious on building on Solana. I think actually when Solana Labs released the bootcamp, I think that is honestly at this point I feel like the best resource I have for any Solana developer that wants to start. Yeah.
I remember when that was first released and you reached out and you said like, this is amazing. Like this is the best piece of content. I guess in reality, it really matters the type of developer you are. Jerry like teaches an amazing boot camp, but he teaches very fast and very hard. Like you're talking about bits and bytes in like the first 5 minutes of like how a key pair is structured. Not everybody coming from the Web2 world would be up to speed, but I think eventually once you kind of get your bearings about how these things work, the boot camp does fit nicely somewhere in the process, just maybe not day one for like the more kind of beginner style developer. I think a lot of these tutorials that exist out here are probably a lighter way to kind of just get an intro like into development. And Jerry's courses don't really touch too much on the Web3 kind of JS side or any of those things. So we need to over time develop different levels of these sorts of boot camps so that you can kind of go from the lighter weight ones to the more advanced things, and like so that you can work your way through it. But we're working on a lot of those things. So with everything you've been up to, like what has been your experience kind of with learning Solana up until this point?
Yeah, my experience honestly have been like I feel like rocky. First because I didn't know Rust, and there is a learning curve in there. They definitely the account model, what everyone's mentioned, that you need to change the way that you think about developing. But I actually like it a lot because I feel that learning Solana is like learning to create an API before you had Node.js, when you were just coding and trying to be like a low level at the protocol level. That is why I feel like we are very early on this new Web3 movement. There is no abstractions besides Anchor, right? But even Anchor is like you are still thinking on the size of the account and things like that.
Speaking of Anchor, you have officially kind of joined Armani and Paul X full time to build Anchor and Anchor tooling.
Yeah, then maybe like a month ago, I think I decided that it was time for me to start working full time again. And I was thinking between creating a company, like creating a product, or joining a team that was building something nice that I like. Then I tweeted something on Twitter, and then I had maybe like I don't know, like 100 DMs.
I know. I made sure to retweet that, and I was like, "Get ready, because it's coming."
Yeah, everyone so much. Like there is a lot of teams with a lot of good pros and a lot of good people trying to find good developers right now. Doesn't matter if you have Solana experience or not, right? They just want people who are good solving problems at this point.
Yeah, and with that said, like there are lots of great products out there. There's lots of great protocols, but I'm glad that Armani was able to snag you up because especially with your skill set and like your ability and your like kind of passion for creating tooling, it sounds like a really cool opportunity for you and just in general, just good for everybody.
Yeah, actually, one of the DMs was Armani. Hey, let's talk, and he sent me like a Telegram message. And then the first thing that he said, yeah, I'm working with Paul X. And the second thing was me saying, yeah, don't worry about it. Then Armani had this vision of creating like an NPM style registry for Solana programs. You can see the documentation, you can see the code base, you can see the different builds for the program. You can see if the if the code base that you are reading at that point is what is deployed on the network or not. And that is essentially saying that if the program is verified. And I think that was a great idea. That is actually the selling point why I wanted to join him and Paul. And essentially now I am working 100% on that. And then I took that core idea and I started dreaming about what else we can do on top of that. Then for me at this point, I feel like Solana programs are very similar to a serverless function because it's just you expect an input, you process that input, and then you give an output. I am right now doing a lot of research, seeing what is out there for monitoring serverless applications and see how I can integrate that into the Solana development process. We are thinking on new features, like, for example, when you go to the registry and you search for a program, you can see right there the ideal of that program. Not just the code for the ideal, but like a nicer representation of that ideal. That way you can see all the dependencies for the transactions. Then other things that you can do is if you are the owner of the program, you should be able just to push to GitHub, and then in the same registry UI, you click just one button and say deploy this to a network. Another feature that we are going to work on is like a security profile, and I think that is one of the critical points right now in blockchain. Then essentially, we want to create a way for auditors to audit a program, sign it on the network, and then using that information, we are going to show in the registry what bills for what programs are audited or not. And then you can see an historical representation of that data. And then if the project decided to, like, for example, open like at the report, they can just upload that PDF in the registry for anyone to consume. That will be optional, but that is information that as a developer I want to have. That way I can make the most informed decision if I want to integrate with this program or not.
Just to kind of like recap, we're talking about some sort of NPM style registry with a nice sleek view. I can pop in there. I can scroll through programs and see the anchor verified programs. I can just text search for a program that I'm specifically looking for. If I'm the owner of that program, I can kind of register my wallet and account and have access to that. I actually was privy to a little sneak preview. Like there's a tab for the source. There's a tab for the builds. There's a tab for all these different things. You could have documentation in there like NPM. You could basically get the kind of like just like a template for how you're supposed to be communicating with this program. And then you have auditors who have a profile and just simply their wallet can come in there and sign to say that I actually verified this version or this release. It's basically just like a giant look into all the programs that are verified. And obviously this only works if your project's open source. Otherwise, there's no way to verify the code, right?
Right. With the registry, one of our goals is to create more incentive for people to open source the project. Because if your project is not open source, you will not be able to use the registry. I actually want to get to the point where the registry gives you so much that you don't think about not opening your code base.
That makes sense. So it's not any sort of aggressive kind of pressure on somebody. It's like if you want access to all these amazing features and you kind of want this kind of crowning achievement of being anchor verified and like in this massive registry of programs, then you're going to do it. What about native Solana programs?
Yes. For native Solana programs, right now, they are going to be included in the registry. And we actually want to do ideals for native Solana programs. Our goal is for the ideal to be what a developer consumes for reusing that program, essentially, right? Doesn't matter if it was written on Anchor or not, and that is the goal. Then every program that you're going to find in the registry, you're going to have an ideal viewer, and that is something that we are working on right now.
Yeah, I'm super excited to just like see, just kind of like I was with the Solana cookbook, when you know that there's like a cool idea that's probably going to take off, and then like you release it into the wild, and all of a sudden everybody's using it and getting on there. And it was the same thing with SolDev. Once people started submitting their own, it's just like an exciting feeling. Like build this place that all these people spend a lot of their time and they can use it and they get a ton of value out of it, it gets exciting really fast. And the next thing you know, you've got a million feature requests from everybody in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of conversations on Twitter and different channels lately, especially about people championing open source from day one. There's kind of a divide, and I see myself as seeing both sides of the equation. So I'm just curious on like what your thoughts are about like being a product person and also kind of new to the space. What do you think about that sort of debate?
Yeah. Then I am an open source person. I was part of the Node.js core team for like a couple of years. We need to find the right balance. I don't know how that looks at this point on blockchain, and I don't think anyone can envision that at right now. But I feel like every founder should have the option to open source or not, and that should be at the end their decision. Maybe if they lose a little bit because they are opening some secrets, they are gaining so much for having that open source because the products that they can use, like the registry, and I hope to see more projects like that in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen success in a lot of these protocols that are fully open source, but a lot of them actually weren't open source from the get-go. There were a couple out there, like Jet Protocol was pretty much open source from the very beginning. A lot more people started to open source, but by the time that some of them open source, they already kind of had gained some market share. In my view, it's kind of about timing it, like what your goals are. But anyway, so I guess moving on, there's a segment that I typically do here, and you're a little bit different of a case because you haven't been sort of fully building on Solana really, but you have been learning Solana. You've been, I know you kind of like to dabble, like this, like absorbing all this information. What advice do you have?
Yeah. Personally, I will say take it one day at a time. Um, can be intimidated to go to Twitter and see Buffalo and Anatoly and Armani tweeting things that are just way too advanced for you. But if you take it one at a time, but you try to consume a little bit of knowledge every day, in a month, you're going to be in a position where you understand what they are talking about. They trust the process, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's like I know you. I've known you for a while. Like you definitely like to take your time and like take in all the information and kind of be pretty thorough about things. Not everybody's like that. A lot of people just say, "Oh, everybody's on blockchain. I need to know everything right now." And they just you basically are trying to run before you can even crawl. And what that usually does, in my experience, is it makes you frustrated, and you're probably likely going to just quit. It really just depends on who you are, but this like don't get frustrated and take your time and ask questions and follow people, and like Italo said, don't expect to understand every tweet that comes out of Anatoly's Twitter, because I don't understand half of them because they're too advanced for me. What needs to change in the Solana ecosystem for us to kind of move forward? I'm going to put you on the spot here. Like, what have you're watching this whole space, you're seeing things being built, you're seeing all these things. Like, what is one thing that needs to be done to improve outside of the Anchor registry? Because that's an obvious answer right there.
Well, I will mention two. The first one I think is education, but I know that is something that you are working on day and night. But I think we need to continue in this, focus on that 110%. And then the second thing is to focus on building, like improving the developer experience with tooling. Like the registry is just one small progress, but if in Ethereum, for example, or I don't think it's Ethereum only, but in they have like alchemy, and even that I don't feel that project is good enough. Honestly, after I use it like for a couple of weeks, it's something that they have there that we don't have yet on Solana. Seeing metrics on the network by program should not be that hard. Seeing the accounts data should not be that hard. Seeing the logs should not be that hard. And we need to be able to filter all that data. We need to be able to programmatically react to that, right? That is something that right now it's impossible to do it. And I think that will be content and focus on the developer experience side.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you just said. I don't even know how people survived with almost no tooling at the time and barely any education. And now we flash forward to today. Like, we have a lot of content, and a lot of people can find it thanks to SolDev. We're starting to see lots of analytical tools pop up. We're seeing lots of other tools pop up. The problem actually is that a lot of people are solving the same problems. They're duplicating these tools, and also there's not a really good place. If I come new to the Solana ecosystem and I want to get analytics on X or Y, where do I even go to find that out? Information architecture and discoverability is one of the biggest problems for anything. And every day I'm thinking of ways to try to reorganize things so that it's a lot more clear. Like, there's a lot more clear path. Where's this? Where's that? How does this work? How does that work? But it's an iterative process. If I tried to like focus on everything at once, I would probably not be able to do my job. So it's just these little milestone wins that just start building on top of each other. And on the educational front, our team has been focused fully on pumping out some boot camps and courses, some more intermediate courses and all these different things. Developer experience, there's a lot going on there. So the feedback from everybody out there listening and watching is the most important thing. That's why you see me asking on Twitter, what sucks, or what's good, or like, what do you think about this, or what's your favorite thing? But anyways, this was great. I'm glad to have you on. Also, we just invented a new segment. What sucks about Solana apparently might be the title. Yeah. Thanks for joining, man. I know it was last minute for this. I'm stoked for you to be working with Armani and PaulX. I'm stoked for the Anchor registry. I think this is going to save a lot of lives in the future. So thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.